why do you need to take the flat 6 and just add it to a diatonic scale? It's almost as if that's how it was meant to be. Because you suddenly realize, especially contrapuntally, if you just add the flat 6 to the scale, your music will still be diatonic, it will still make sense, yet you will add this whole entire chromatic dimension to it harmonically. So like what I like to do is take E major, I'll be composing in the key of E major, just throw in C. So let's think about that. If you have E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, throw in the note C, the flat 6, C sharp, so B, C, C sharp. That's completely chromatic right there. And of course, it has a lot of melodic implications. But I want to talk about harmonically what this does. You get immediately 4 new chords come to mind. So diatonically, you have G sharp minor, okay? But by adding C to this, now you have G sharp major with the dominant 7. Just by adding C to the scale, you now have access to this chord. You also get a D sharp diminished 7. Because normally the diatonic 7 you get on that chord is the C sharp. Now you can either use C sharp or you can use C on top of that triad that's D sharp, F sharp, A. Whole new sound. So you can get more nuanced with the exact color you want your chords to be just by adding this one note. You also get the chord A minor with a major 7, A, C, E, G sharp. So you get that kind of A minor tonality in there. You get the implication of a C major 7 chord by C, E, and B. The 5th is not in the scale, but you can still show that C major 7 tonality, even with while you're still in the key of E. A really fancy chord you get is C sharp minor with a major 7. These minor chords with a major 7, they're perfect. They are begging for voice leading. And this one little chromatic thing in the scale from B, C, C sharp, that begs for voice leading, even melodically. I think I was just explaining to another guy in a YouTube comment. That's kind of what the fire for this video was. Melodically, you have a B, and you can be bouncing that off of C or right above it. Or you're on C, you can bounce that off of either B below it or C sharp above it, or you're on C sharp melodically, and you can bounce that off of the C below it. All that needs to be said is your music will still sound diatonic enough to make sense, but it will be chromatic enough to be expressive and more colorful and more harmonically nuanced. The D sharp diminished 7, that is a dark, powerful sound. And a lot of these devices, if you're treating a major scale with a flat 6, we just treat that as a mode. But contrapuntally, you'll see, I talk about the way when you play guitar, you know how you play a pentatonic scale, and it's easy to have melodies. Just, you play a melody, you just hit the root, you can keep blazing through the pentatonic, and you get right back where you need to be on the root of the 5th, wherever the hell. But like that in counterpoint, just by adding the flat 6 to the scale, you can keep composing counterpoint in the mode, and it doesn't sound basic and diatonic. It sounds, yet it does at the same time. It sounds like you're being diatonic, yet it also sounds like you're pushing this, and it confuses the listener in a way, in a very riveting way, because you're just pushing on that bubble of diatonicism. But it's hard to hear. It's hard to hear this chromaticism. This chromaticism, if you do it right, if you harmonize it right, if you're constantly aware of your harmony and what chords you're using, it sounds diatonic. It literally sounds like you've never gone out of the key for one moment. I had a theory of, I want to call this mode I made up. I'm sure I didn't make it up, but I almost want to call it a super-diatonic. Because to me, it almost seems as if this scale and then modes of this scale gives you all the emotional color you're looking for. Because if you just make purely diatonic music, and I do that, everybody does that, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's leaving something wanting harmonically. And you don't have to do all these wild jazz extensions, chromaticism. You don't have to do all that, and I'm not hating on that. I love all that shit. But this is a very accessible way to honestly understand, teach yourself voice leading, and to begin to see music as alchemical. It's a word I use a lot. Because a lot of these new chords you get can obviously set up modulation. And you don't even need to modulate. You don't need to, but if you want to, they set it up for you perfectly. So basically use this as a cheat code. If all your friends are composing these diatonically, major or minor, what the hell, you have this cheat code on them. They'll be like, hey, wait, why does your music sound just slightly more expressive than mine? Seemingly. How are you able to transcend to this next emotional peak, this next emotional nuance? People will say it's like, well, how do you sound like Chopin? How do you sound like Bach or Beethoven? And the main thing is, it's like melodically, the melodic almost writes itself. Like it's if you get the chord changes right and counterpoint, even if it's independent voices, if you get them aligning to where it is like a chord change you can kind of get a grasp on, the melodies do write themselves. It becomes like a Sudoku puzzle. It's like write a melody with the scale, but include the flat six through it. So when you're moving stepwise, you'll be going from B to C to C sharp a lot if you have stepwise voices. And that's something to implement. And when you have that stepwise voice, it's like what goes above that voice, what goes below it. Like what is the bass note of that voice and what is the overarching melody. And you see how you make all of your notes align into, it's like, you know you can go into an A minor, major 7 tonality. It's like, let's get everything in this counterpoint that's in this one space and time. Let's get that, all those notes to be either A, C, E, or G sharp. Easy as that. Because you'll notice there's times where it's like, say you have an E chord right here, you have a B chord right here. You'll get to a point where you have a D sharp diminished chord. But then when you get there, it's like melodically, what's the next note that makes most sense? Is it C or C sharp as the 7th, whatever, on top of that? And that's where the colors really start to come out. I know this kind of thing is hard to explain, just me verbalizing it, rather than you seeing it or doing it yourself. But either way, put it to use. I recommend any topic you'd like to talk about. Go Vols, baby.